Hey everybody, welcome into this Adobe Illustrator tutorial brought to you, as always, by tutvid.com. Today we're going to take a look at line art. We're going to be creating this little Empire State Building emblem, symbol, piece of art, basically. But we're mainly going to focus on something called the Shaper tool in Adobe Illustrator. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the Join tool, both of which I think are really cool tools. And if you use them well and you really get used to using them, it can really change the way you work with Adobe Illustrator and make things faster and maybe like even a little more non-destructive, if you will. It's a different way of working with things, but it's kind of cool. Let's take a look at it. So I have here this Empire State Building little emblem-y logo, piece of line art, really. And we're going to talk about creating the shape of the Empire State Building, and then I'll leave it up to you to add what lines you like. But I'll show you kind of how I create a clipping mask and work with some of the shapes within what's going to be called a shaper group as we're working on our Empire State Building. So the first thing I'll do is I'll shut this off. Maybe we'll use it for reference or something as we build our shape, but hey, who knows? I have a background here. I'm going to unlock it. If I select it and double-click my fill color, you can see the color is just FFFFBB. It's a very pale yellow color. Great. I'm going to lock that layer up again so we don't touch it. I'm going to create a new layer here. I'm going to create it above everything, though. And I'm going to name this layer by double-clicking on it. I'm going to name it Ref for reference, and we're going to go File, Place. We're going to place a reference image of the Empire State Building into our document. I can just click anywhere to drop it wherever I like. Hold down my Shift key and just size the whole kit and caboodle down just a little bit. Great. That looks pretty cool. I'll make it a little bit bigger there. Now, I picked this photo of the Empire State Building because I wanted something that was kind of like a little bit further away from the building itself. So I got more of like, hey, here's a full flat side of the building. You can see like a little tiny bit of the side of the building. But I mainly just wanted to see as flat a version of the overall building as possible, and I think I got that. So I'm going to double-click on this layer, choose to dim the images in this layer to 50%. It's almost like putting a piece of tracing paper over your image. Just makes it easier to see your lines and things. It's kind of cool. And then hit the little area in between the eyeball and the colored bar to lock the reference layer and, of course, create a new layer. We'll just name this one New Lines for the sake of just being different or something. So new lines, there we go. And now we're going to begin creating lines. So I'm going to zoom in here, and the first thing we're looking to do is basically, you can see how the Empire State Building is broken down into these very rectangular type shapes. A lot of concrete used when they built this building. So it's these very, just boxy square shapes, very Art Deco as well. You can see all the ornamentation and things like that. That doesn't really have anything to do with this tutorial, but just thought I'd point it out. So we're going to begin probably use the rectangle tool and get our initial shapes and kind of build from there. So what I'm going to do, well, first I'm going to get rid of my fill by hitting the none option, and we're going to work with a stroke. So I can double click on the stroke, and let's get a fully black stroke. So hit OK, great. Well, let's try that again. Let's go black. Great, hit OK. There we go. We've got a black stroke now, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. So I'm going to begin by just dragging a rectangle over this entire sort of bottom portion of the Empire State Building. There we go, voila. You can't really see the stroke because it's pretty small. It's just 1 point. We're gonna change that in a moment here. I'm going to just sort of align that where I want it to go. Use my arrow keys, nudge it right into place. Now, I should point out, under the View menu, I do have Smart Guides and Snap to Point turned on. It's generally how I work in Adobe Illustrator, regardless of the fact. But Smart Guides, working on this kind of project is going to be particularly helpful because of some of the snapping and some of the alignment features that it's going to offer to us. It'll make a little bit more sense in a little bit. But if you go View, Smart Guides, and turn that on, you'll be on the exact same page as me if you're following along. So now with this shape created, we're going to go up here to Stroke and just set the stroke to like 10 points or something. We might end up boosting it up to 15, but it'll be easier to work with a little bit of a narrower stroke, especially when we start using the Shaper tool. Now, speaking of the Shaper tool, let's take a look at it. Let's grab the line segment tool here, and we need to create a rectangle here on this side of the building, right? And we need to create one over here, because if I zoom in and take a look, you can see how there's like a corner of the building there, and this bit in the middle, like these 3 strips of windows, they're actually inset. And it's, these two ends of the building stick out. So we're going to just drag a line straight down. Hold down Shift to maintain the straight line. Hold down your space bar if you need to move the line around. There we go. I think I got that lined up perfectly, and just commit my line. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to drag a line over, Make sure I have it lined up perfectly and commit my line. Now we could go through and maybe we should actually select both of these lines, hit Command or Control G to group them up, and then select everything together. So just our box and our 2 lines. And up here under our alignment options, we're going to make sure we have Align to Selection chosen. This is going to allow us to align just within the items we've selected. And we're going to make sure that we align the vertical centers of these bad boys. Actually, that would be the horizontal center, wouldn't it? Yeah, the horizontal center. So basically what we're doing is we're just ensuring that this box on this side and this box on this side will be the same size. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and grab the Shaper tool. It's this guy right over here, Shaper tool, hotkey, Shift-N. I'm actually going to just hit this little arrow. It's going to pop this entire toolbar out into its own little sort of free-flowing toolbar. I find that can be helpful, especially for something like this where I know I'm going to be using it a lot. The Shaper tool is amazing, especially if you're drawing shapes and stuff with a stylus where you can just like draw a square or a rectangle and it's going to give that to you. You know, a circle, boom, you got a circle, a triangle, bam, you got a triangle. We're not going to be using it for that. We're going to be using it to trim and build shapes when we already have these created. Because we're sort of copying the Empire State Building, it's going to be quicker and easier for us to use the rectangle tool, draw out rectangles, and then combine them after the fact. So here's how we're going to combine the strokes, the 2 lines that we drew with the box we drew. First thing we need to do is just trim the edges off. We do that by just drawing a squiggly line over them, just like that. Bam. See that? Isn't that pretty cool? Just go ahead and squiggle. And not only have we gotten rid of the bits of line that are sticking out, but our lines have been sort of joined together into what's called a shaper group. If I hover over this, well, actually, this is just grouped. I'm sorry. We're going to be creating a shaper group in just a minute. Typically, when you're using the shaper tool, you're going to get something called a shaper group. So let's do what we have to do to get the shaper group. Actually, one of the things I want to show you, I'm going to grab the white arrow. This is a direct selection tool. I'm going to select the path line on the bottom and just hit the delete key. That's going to wipe out the path on the bottom because remember in our finished effect here, maybe I should drag this back up to the top. In our finished effect here, drag this bad boy over here. We don't really have a bottom on our Empire State Building. We just have these lines that are streaking to just kind of randomized lengths. Kind of a neat effect. So we know we're not going to need the bottom, and when we grab all these anchor points down here and shrink it or stretch it out, I don't want that horizontal line to be there, just kind of mucking things up for us. And now you can actually see, since we got rid of that line, we do, well, I take that back. We still don't have our shaper group. I'm going to just lock my lines layer and be quiet. I'm going to shut the lines layer off as well so we don't have that distracting us. Let's go ahead and grab the rectangle tool once more, and I'm fairly certain that this will end up converting this to a shaper group. I'm going to just drag out a rectangle about that sized. Great. Now I'm going to copy this rectangle. Again, I want all of these shapes to be like exactly the same size. I want there to be some level or element of precision involved. So Command or Control C, Command or Control F to paste it right in place, and just drag straight over holding down Shift, and you'll be able to drop your shape right in place. Now, again, these are not lined up correctly, so let's grab both of these. We could actually do this after we join it to the group, but I just, force of habit, it's easier for me to do it this way. Command or Control G to group them together, and then select the whole kit and caboodle, so we're grabbing our big shape group here and our little grouping of shapes that we created. And again, align to selection, align to the horizontal center. Great. Select our shapes here. Command Shift G will ungroup them so we can work with them independently. Now check this out with the shaper tool. So if we begin in our existing shape group and we draw a line into a new shape and then back out and then back into that shape, we're going to just kind of cut that little edge off, and this is now a part of our shaper group, but it's been trimmed off nicely. Now, if I go in and out and back in, but I'm all the way off of my shape, you see how I went all the way up into the rectangle there beyond the edge of my current shape, and I end my line inside of that rectangle, you can see it does this kind of like, you know, bit of gymnastics to mesh these shapes together, and it is still a shape that's been meshed into our shaper group, but we just haven't preserved that line. It's more or less joined it. We want to preserve the line, so we're just going to go in and out over that little bit and make sure we're living within this larger shaper group. And you can see now we've really built the base of the Empire State Building. If I select this, we have our group of all these shapes, and it's really pretty great. Let's go ahead now and create this top portion of the Empire State Building, again with the rectangle tool. Go ahead and just drag out a rectangle about like that. Once more, we'll select all of our stuff. Make sure we have align to selection turned on. Just align those horizontal centers. It's lined up beautifully. And again, here with the shaper tool, we can go in and out, and just clip these corners off of the shape. We also want to get rid of this line that's appearing. We can do that as well. Just run over it a couple times, and it gets rid of it. So now we've created kind of this top portion of the Empire State Building as well. And now that we've done that, let's grab the rectangle tool again, and let's create the remainder of our rectangular shapes up here. So I got one for there. How many did I do here in my initial shape? So I did that. That's the one we just created. Okay, so we'll do like 2 more on top of it. So let's go with like one here. Maybe make this a little bit larger. One like that. And then one here, which is going to be like the base, the pillar of the spire. And we'll grab all of these shapes. Again, we're aligning to selection and align to the horizontal center. They're all lined up beautifully. I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to use the shaper tool and just begin meshing all these shapes together. So again, grab the shaper tool, just in and out, great, in and out, great. This one's going to be tough because you can see those path lines are very close together, but in and out, great. And just like that, we mesh all those shapes together. Here's where things also are going to get kind of cool because we're going to introduce some angularness to what we're doing. So let's grab our line tool again and begin by drawing out an angle that begins. You can see I'm beginning the angle inside of my rectangle, and maybe I'll take it up to like something like there. All right. Now I want to duplicate this angle, so I'm just going to select it, hit Command or Control C, Command or Control F. That's going to paste it right in place and just drag it straight across, and it's going to maintain its straightness. If you hold down the Shift key, it's going to just allow you to drag it straight across. We need to flip it, so we're going to flip it by going Object, Transform, Reflect. Reflect it along the vertical center, hit OK. There we go. Drag it kind of sort of into place there. Now we're going to take both of these shapes, or both of these lines really, move them out here so we can work on it a little bit easier. I think I'm going to stretch it upward a little bit, maybe downward a little bit as well. I'm going to grab the line tool again, and I'm going to drag or draw 2 lines across to make what essentially is going to be a little shape. The problem is it's not a shape. It's still 4 individual lines. And nothing about it is a shape, so we have a lot of customization work, except we don't, because we're getting ready to use what's called the Join tool. The Join tool is amazing. Make sure you don't have anything selected here, and just paint over like the 2 areas sticking out like that, and Illustrator just says, all right, we're going to get rid of them. We're going to join that shape, trim it, join it, and the path is now connected. Boom, boom, boom. Just like that, I can take a few lines and make a nice shape out of it. And now this guy can be dragged over, dropped into place, just like that. I can use my line tool again. I'm going to make another kind of angular mark here. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. Just like that, angular line, I should say. Command or Control C, Command or Control F, Shift to drag it over, Object, Transform, Reflect, great, along the vertical axis, beautiful. Grab this stuff, move it over here. We'll stretch it out just a little bit, and we're going to create our horizontal lines. And once more, just use that Join tool and go ahead, make sure nothing's selected, use that Join tool and just paint over. It's so cool when you start using this. It's really, really neat. Great, so we've got that piece of the spire. Let's do another part of the spire. We'll probably do this next part with the rectangle tool itself. So let's create kind of a nice rectangular shape. Again, we'll line all this stuff up a little bit better in a moment. And again, take your line tool and let's create just like a little pointy piece like this. I'm going to move it over into here. This is going to be like the piece that's there just before we get to like the radio tower part of the spire. Command or Control C to copy it. Command or Control F to paste it in place. Shift drag that sucker over. Object, Transform, Reflect along the vertical axis. Right, we've done this 100 times already. Grab both of them. Let's move them over. Make them a little bit taller. Add those horizontal lines. Oh, by the way, see that little dot in the middle of the line? The Join tool works best when that's kind of between the paths that you're selecting, so like or joining. So I know that I'm going to be joining my path right there at that intersection and right there, and that little dot is in between. It just works better. So there we go. Great. Grab our Join tool, click. It's going to deselect stuff for us, and just go ahead and just paint those corners away beautifully. Love it. I'm going to drag this back over. I'm going to place it right there in place. And the last thing I need to do is to do the actual spire. So I can use the rectangle tool or I can use the stroke tool. I think I'm going to use the rectangle tool. And I'm going to begin my rectangle way down here. And I'm going to just make my spire kind of sort of just like that. I kind of dig it. It looks pretty cool. All right, so before we do anything else, let's grab all of these shapes and hover over our shaper group, and we're going to make sure we have a line to selection chosen, and we're going to align everything so it's all aligned perfectly down the middle. And once again, just like we've been doing with the shaper tool, just go in there and ba-bam. Be careful when you get to these ones that are kind of tight. Ba-bam. Beautiful. And then add that spire. and everything has been joined together beautifully. And we have what is the sort of exoskeleton of the Empire State Building. Now I'm looking at this, and this does not look right, this rectangular shape here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click to get inside of my shaper group. I'm going to grab my direct selection tool and just select that anchor point there and hold down my shift key and tap the right arrow key. Now shift and the right arrow key is a little bit too much, so I'm going to tap left 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe. All right, so I'm going to do it with the other side now. Shift in the left arrow, and I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go, something like that. So we're just adding a little bit of angle. Yeah, that looks, it looks kind of sort of a lot-ish better. And I can select the actual shape, right? And I can move it a little bit. So maybe I'll just move it straight downward, and that's going to kind of make it just a little bit smaller. So it looks a little bit more like a spire and maybe a little bit less like a crayon. Something like that looks good there within our shaper group, within our group. Let's go all the way back out to kind of our base level. Great. So at this point, we can just begin adding lines. Now, I'm not going to go through adding all of the lines. I'm going to show you how I add maybe these lines. We'll do these lines here because that includes creating a clipping mask. And then it's up to you. You can create as many or as few lines as you like. And I'll just walk you through the lines I have over in the other piece of artwork. So I can close the little shaper tool dialog box thingy-majig there. And what we want to do, if I turn on my reference image once more, the idea is to create a couple lines that are going to mimic these windows or doors or whatever this is at this level of the Empire State Building. So what we're going to do, let's shut off our, let's shut off our reference image while I have it on. Let's grab the line tool here, and I'm just going to create a couple, I'm just going to create one kind of long line just like that. I'm going to grab my move tool, and I'll shift it over a little bit. And I'm going to hold down my Alt-Option key and the Shift key. I'm holding down my Shift. So I'm holding down the Alt-Option key and Shift key and just dragging. And what it's going to do is duplicate. Well, I'm all over the place here. It's going to duplicate the path. It's going to, there we go. It's going to duplicate the path, and holding down Shift will constrain it to that straight line. So I'm going to, once more, I'm going to just drag a copy over, hold down Shift to constrain it. Great. And we have 4 of these, what will be windows. Now, I want them all to be aligned properly and spaced properly. You can see they're definitely not spaced correctly. So let's grab all 4 of them, just Shift-clicking each of them. Once more, look to our Align options. Align to selection, great. Instead of using our alignment options, we're going to use the spacing options. We're going to hit this one right here, Horizontal Distribute Center. It's going to make sure they're all spaced perfectly. Now we'll group them, Command or Control G. We're going to group them. Why? Well, because I want to, and remember, I have my smart guides turned on, so I don't even really need to use my alignment options. I'm going to drag them side to side until I get that big pink line right down the middle that's saying, look, bam, right there. They're lined up perfectly in the center with your Empire State Building. Now, here's the issue. I need to get this little rectangular shape here and mask these windows within that shape. Well, we can double click on our group, and I can actually ungroup this, Command Shift G, and now I just have direct access to my shaper group, which is really what I want anyway. And I can select that rectangle, Command or Control C to copy it. Let's go back out to our lines, and then Command or Control F to just paste it in place. So we're pasting this outside of the shaper group just as its own little shape. I'm going to drag this line upward to like right about there, so the windows are going to end underneath our thick black line. And I'm going to, with this shape highlighted, I'm going to hold down my Shift key and select the group of lines, which are going to be our windows, and then I can just right-click and choose Make Clipping Mask. Bam, just like that. We've created those lines. And it's really, really fast. When you get into a groove, you can just go in, grab what you need, get out. Go in, grab what you need, get out. And also, when it comes to shortening the lines down here at the base of the Empire State Building, you can take your direct selection tool here, and you can just drag them upward. And you can see we're not affecting all the sizing up here on the top part of the Empire State Building, just our lines down here at the bottom. So that's a really neat way that you can lengthen or shorten your copy of the Empire State Building if that's how you're using it in your artwork or whatever you're doing with it. And then you can see here, basically what I did was I just created a couple lines here on top of these little pillars, and then just multiples of lines which are going to represent, if I bring up the reference image once more, which are basically going to reference, we have like 3 lines of windows in each of these, and then 3 lines of windows down the middle. So I just created 3 lines in each. I actually think I have 4 lines. Yeah, 4 lines here on the outer sort of bigger pillars in my finished piece. You can do as many or as few as you want, but you're going to use those techniques to make sure they're spaced properly, right? You just grab all of them. You use that horizontal distribute center to space them out correctly along a horizontal axis. Beautiful. And then you just clipping mask them, apply clipping mask right there in place. And where do you get clipping mask from? Well, you get that shape from within your shaper group. So we've gone ahead and we've created the Empire State Building. And I actually should say, let me shut off my new lines. Let's go back to the old lines for a quick second. Once you've created all of your lines, you're going to have, lines down here, and they're not necessarily going to be part of your shaper group. So just select all of your artwork and hit Command or Control G to group it up. It's going to, you're just going to have nice access to it. You can just click on it once and it's going to select everything. And you could even do something like, hey, let's go and align to artboard and align this to the horizontal and vertical centers of our artboard and have just a nice little Empire State Building line art piece of artwork. That's how we create it. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you go ahead and leave a little like on it. Drop a comment if you feel so inclined. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. That way you never miss another video into the future. And for creating line art in Illustrator, for using the shaper tools and the join tool. And it's so powerful. I don't know. It's like I'm so intently focused when I'm talking about it and looking at it and working with these shapes. It's really amazing to watch. But for the shaper tool, for the joiner tool, and for feeling like I'm in an Empire state of mind, what? That's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one.